Ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, we have some brand new product leaks and releases that we will likely see at ICAST in a few short weeks. We have a quick status update on both Major League Fishing and the Bassmaster Elite Series, from their schedules to their Angler of the Year races and more. We discuss our biggest weaknesses as anglers in this week's fishing poll. And in the mailbag, we tackle a variety of topics, including hybridization, expensive to cheap combos for your kayak, fishing on hot, muggy days, and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tackle Talk Podcast. I appreciate you joining us today. Before we jump into today's episode, we do have to give a big shout out to the boys that make this entire podcast possible, and that would be the great folks over at The Rod Locker. The Rod Locker is located in Evansville, Indiana, and they have an awesome brick and mortar showroom over there. If you live anywhere near Evansville, it is worth the drive to go check out my favorite small tackle shop that I've ever been to, that I've ever worked with or been a part of, or got to visit. They just have such a great mix of the big name brands that you want, but also some like cool smaller things. They have, again, a nice mix of like USA versus JDM gear. They have an awesome selection of rods and reels from Abu Garcia, Daiwa, Fenwick, Shimano, G. Loomis, you name it. They've got everything over there, but they also have an awesome selection of used gear as well. You get some really screaming deals if you shop their used gear section often, which is why I'm always checking it, and I'm probably looking at it, 3 or 4 times a week just to see what's popping up on there. So their used gear page over at rodlocker.com is worth checking out just itself. But if you enjoy buying your fishing gear from a great family-owned Midwestern tackle shop that actually cares about you and has great pricing, great sales. They have an awesome loyalty program, whether you do the free version or whether you upgrade to the Rod Locker Platinum, which is what I do. So you get free shipping with no minimums on every single order. You get extra money back on every order you make. It pays for itself within the first purchase or two. So I always do that every single year. And there's just a ton of reasons why the Rod Locker is my favorite tackle shop. And I always look there first for anything that I'm going to buy for my fishing needs. So you can go check them out over at www.rodlocker.com. And as always, you can use our coupon code to save you even more money on your order by entering code TackleTalkJuly. All one word, Tackle Talk July, gets you an extra 5% off your entire order. It's sales stackable. Make sure to use that at checkout. That helps them know that we sent you there, but then also saves you some money on the back end. So it's a win-win for everybody. So again, that is www.rodlocker.com and code TackleTalkJuly. All right, everybody, our first item of business here on the show today is a friendly reminder to you all out there that our highly requested Tackle Talk Retro Smalley Snapback hats are going to be live on the website today, July 7th, starting at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Mountain, 9 a.m. Pacific. So if you head over to www.tackletalkpodcast.com, you can click store at the top of the page and you will see those hats go live on the site starting at noon Eastern. And we do have a very limited inventory of these, so they are first come, first serve over on the Tackle Talk website. And not only do you get a sick hat, but you help support this show. We don't do Patreon. We don't do YouTube memberships. Tackle Talk is free every single Tuesday, and that's not changing anytime soon. So this is just a cool way to not only get some awesome gear and have something that is cool to wear around, but also you are supporting the show and keeping us going and keeping us doing what we're doing. So I appreciate that as well. I mean, I love my Smalley snapback hat. It is my daily hat these days. It's the first one I grab on the way out the door. It's sort of that, kind of retro tackle shop vibe. By far our most popular merch item we've ever done. And it is back for the first time in years and in stock starting today at noon. So again, friendly reminder, tackletalkpodcast.com. You can go to the store page. The Tackle Talk Retro Smalley Snapback hats are going live on the website today, July 7th at noon Eastern. Thank you all so much, and I'm looking forward to packaging these up later tonight and shipping out your orders. All right, next up here, I do want to hit a tiny bit of pro news really fast. Now, there's not much in the way of big tournaments going on right now because both Bassmaster and Major League Fishing are both in that kind of stretch of the summer where there's a huge break in their schedules. I mean, the Bassmaster Elite Series haven't had an event since, I think, June 11th through 14th, and they won't start back up until August 13th. And then if you jump over to Major League Fishing, they finished their last tournament June 21st, and they don't start Stage 7 until like August 6th. So you have quite a long lull in high-level pro action in July. So at this point in the year, there are like 1 to 2 more events per circuit, and it's probably good to take a step back and let's look at the Angler of the Year races for both leagues so we can kind of set the stage for what will be on the line when these resume here in a couple weeks. So on the Major League Fishing side, on the Bass Pro Tour, you have one event to go, Stage 7, and you have Zach Burge leading the Angler of the Year race with 451 points, followed very closely by Jacob Wheeler sitting in second place at 439 points. And then you have Spencer Sheffield in third place at 413, Justin Lucas in fourth at 396, and Drew Gill in fifth place at 391 points. So your top 5 are separated by like 60 points. Now, it does kind of look like this is setting up to be a Zach Burge versus Jacob Wheeler showdown in the final event here. And if Zach Burge has a tough event at Lake Erie at Stage 7, Wheeler might be able to capitalize on this. I mean, Wheeler is a Midwest guy. He's from Indiana. Zach Burge is from Oklahoma, I think. So probably a little closer to home for Wheeler, being on Erie and launching out of Sandusky, Ohio. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. Can Wheeler win his 3rd Angler of the Year in a row and his 5th Angler of the Year title in 6 years? An unprecedented streak, the likes of which we've probably never seen at this level of fishing competition before. Or will Zach Burge win his 1st Angler of the Year on the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour? Or, I guess even crazier, could Sheffield, Lucas, Gill, could any of those guys make a crazy run at this in the final event? We will find out August 6th through 9th at Lake Erie for Stage 7 of the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour. And then on the Bassmaster Elite Series side, we have another familiar storyline because at the top of the Angler of the Year standings with 2 events to go, we have Trey McKinney and a Johnston brother. And we have seen this song and dance before, but this time it's Corey Johnston who sits in second place with 538 points, and Trey McKinney has a respectable lead at 554 points. So, what is that? Quick math, like 16 points that Corey Johnston is behind and just sort of breathing down Trey McKinney's neck. And then right behind Corey Johnston, breathing down his neck, is Drew Cook, who is only like 1 point behind Corey Johnston at 537 points. Then you have Cole Sands in 4th place, only behind Corey by like 5 points, and John Garrett rounds out your top 5 at 252 points total. So this is a little different because we have 2 events to go. We have Champlain and the St. Lawrence River, and we still have one of each type of event left. Champlain has no live sonar, and St. Lawrence at the end of the year does have live sonar. So we will be watching both of those events very closely as well, and that picture will probably become much more clear as we finish the no forward-facing Champlain event August 13th through 16th. All right, everybody, let's keep moving here. Let's jump into the main portion of today's episode. And you've probably noticed by now, but the calendar has flipped to July as of last week. And quite literally the second that I woke up on July 1st, ICAST teasers and leaks started happening like immediately. Now, ICAST itself isn't until July 14th. So July 1st, when a lot of this started coming out, we were about 2 weeks away from ICAST. And like I said, it was instant, earlier than I've ever seen it. I feel like July 1st, boom, new products start leaking. And a few years back, it seems like the teasers would start, a couple days before ICAST, and then it would be a week before ICAST and a week and a half. And now we're like over 2 weeks prior to ICAST. It's almost like Black Friday and Black Friday sales that just start happening earlier and earlier every year. It used to be, Black Friday the day itself, and then it was Black Friday at midnight, and then it was, 5 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, the Black Friday stores would open. And now it's like Black Friday all month long. That's kind of the same thing we're seeing with ICAST product drops as of late, as they just seem to happen earlier and earlier. So today, we're going to make you all aware of a lot of the products that have been leaked so far, at least as of the recording of this episode. It's also important to remember, I'm recording this a few days before you're listening to it, and things change and happen so fast that there could be even more out now by the time you're listening. But as of recording here, there are some things that we can probably go ahead and start talking about. Now, before we do, a few quick notes. Number one is this is not a review or an opinion per se of any of these products. This is strictly news and announcements is what I would probably call this, because I haven't put my hands on any of these yet. I haven't seen them in person. I haven't thrown any of them. So there's no point to editorialize at all for any of these products because all we've seen is a picture or a description. Now, the editorialization of these products, I guess, and my opinions and what I think about them and my firsthand accounts with these products will start happening after our ICAST episode, which is going to drop Tuesday, July 21st, right after ICAST. So at that point, I have got to pick a lot of these products up. I've got to talk to a lot of the, designers or product development folks, or I've got to throw them in a tank or, at least got to play around with them, see the quality, see the features up close in person. Then you can start to form opinions and you can talk about what you like and what you don't like. I just don't think you can really do that by looking at a picture. So today, I'm just going to make you aware of some of the teasers or leaks that have happened so far. And then number two here is if you've listened to Tackle Talk for a while, I might sound like a broken record here and I apologize, but for all of our newer listeners, we here at Tackle Talk do not leak anything first. I don't leak or spoil any type of product. I wait till someone else does that and then we can talk about it because I've said a million times over and over again, I'm not in the business of beating the tackle companies to the punch. They have put, in many cases, years worth of work into these products. And I don't think it's right for some random guy in Dayton, Ohio to blow it up and spoil their announcement on the internet for some clicks. They should get to decide when that product gets announced, how it gets announced, how they want to roll it out and really message this to the public for the first time. That's their moment. That's not my moment. I'm not here to play spoiler. And in many of these products cases, like they have meticulously planned out social posts and, cryptic messages and teasers and press releases and clues. And they deserve, like I said, to not have all of that ruined by somebody like me for a few clicks. I think that's kind of a lame thing to do sometimes. So I do not spoil products, but if somebody else does, then it's completely fair game. Because if I can look hard enough on the internet and find information about that product that is already public, quote unquote, because it's on the internet for everybody to see, if I can find that in a matter of minutes, then it's completely fair game because someone else has already leaked it. Someone has put that on the internet already. And I feel at that point, now we are free to report on it because I'm not the one that's spoiling it. And this has been my philosophy since we started Tackle Talk. There are products right now that I know about that will be released at ICAST that have not been mentioned whatsoever in the public. I don't think anybody except for like inside industry people that work at those companies know that those products are coming out, but I'm not going to mention those because they haven't been leaked yet, and I'm not going to be the one to do it. Not everything in the world is worth the almighty click, and sometimes I think it's important to remember that. So today, there are a few products that have made their way to the depths of the internet. I don't know who released these. I don't know how they got out there, but I think we are free to talk about some of these because they are kind of in the public domain at this point. So without further ado, let's jump into the names, some prices, some specs of some products that will be coming out at ICAST 2026. So first up, let's start with Heddon. And it's kind of funny because Heddon is a very old company, old school topwater lures, but Heddon is coming out with some new offerings this year that we have never seen under the Heddon name before. So the first thing that we have from Heddon is the Spook Stick Topwater Walking Bait. Now, these are pretty unique looking topwaters. They almost look like a musky suic or like a dive and rise type bait if you look at them, just the overall shape of them. They're interesting looking for sure. They are 3.5 inches long. They're 1/4 ounce. They have 2 number 6 hooks on them, and it looks like they're going to be priced at $11.99. And this isn't a completely new shape before. We should probably say that right off the bat. Like a lot of products you're going to see at ICAST, they are not like revolutionary, the only time this has ever been done for sure. And I know we'll talk about that in depth in the ICAST episode. But if anybody is dialed into old school baits, I think it was called the Viva Pencil 90 something like that. If you go back and look, there have been baits that have had this kind of general shape before, where you have the flat front of the face, a skinnier head that comes back to like a fatter body and then back to a skinnier tail, but still kind of has that spook profile to it. That's what you're getting with this spook stick from Hedden, is more of like, it looks like a walking topwater bait that just doesn't have that traditional spook body. It's got a little bit more in the way of contour lines. And then they're also coming out with a spook stick crawler topwater, which looks like the same body as the spook stick that we just talked about, but it has a raised, almost jackal riser style metal lip on the front of it. The crawler version, interesting enough, is also listed at 3 inches versus the 3.5 inches of the regular version, so it's a little shorter. It is also listed at 3/8 of an ounce, so a little heavier, and it has different hooks on it. The crawler version comes with number 8s, the regular version comes with number 6, but the price is still the same at $11.99. And then Hedden is also coming out with the Spin & Image Junior Topwater Plopper for $9.99. Now, they've had the regular Spin & Image out for a while, their plopper style bait that they've had under the Hedden name. And the regular version was 3.5 inches and a half ounce, I believe. And then they've basically now said that they're going to come out with the junior version at ICAST this year, which is 3 inches long and 3/8 of an ounce. So stubbier, shorter, lighter, just a different size of the Spin & Image at $10. Next up, if we want to stick with topwater, Teckle is coming out with a Kick Knocker Micro version, so a smaller version of their regular Kick Knocker spook style bait. I am told here that the micro version is going to be 3.07 inches long and 0.31 ounces. It's also pretty expensive, just like a lot of Teckle stuff is. The price tag on that Teckle Kick Knocker Micro is going to be $22.99. Keep going here. We have some new gear from Snagproof that is going to come out with an XL version of their popular Zoo Pop, and the XL version is going to be $11.99. Again, just a different size here. Spro is also coming out with a new size of the Essential Series Flappin' Frog. This one is going to be in a 60 size. I believe they've had a 65 out for a while. So you're starting to see a trend here. You're seeing a lot of new sizes dropping in the topwater world, but nothing earth-shattering that we can talk about just yet. That will be coming, hopefully, in a couple weeks. If we want to go still in the topwater world, we have a couple new buzz baits. One from Missile Baits, the Buzz Wagon, is going to be priced at $11.99, which is just like a skirtless buzz bait that Missile's coming out with. And then there's another one from Brazzalo here too that looks like it's coming out. If we want to keep moving here, we move over to everybody's favorite type of baits, the urchins. I mean, goodness, I know everybody's just clamoring for more urchin talk. I'll skip over this pretty quickly, but there are a ton of urchins that are going to be released and leaked and whatever over the next couple weeks. I know Hide Up is going to show off their Koiki Mini 8mm creature bait, which just looks like a smaller version of the Koiki, but I think Koikis usually have like whatever it is, 18 appendages that stick off of it. 2 of those 18 look like they're going to be a lot longer than the others, so it looks like it kind of has 2 little legs on it. Fine, I guess. It looks like Imakatsu is bringing over the Dumbbell Crab Elastomer 22mm in a 2-pack, which is just kind of like a double Koiki looking bait that's shaped kind of like a dumbbell. Those are $23 for a 2-pack. And then it looks like Fish or Die is dropping some urchin baits. There are going to be a million others. I'm not going to sit here and name all of these, but it will be Koiki Palooza. It'll be Urchin Palooza. And like I said, you can probably bet that we will skip over a lot of that because at this point, I'm just tired of it. In the worm world, Yum is actually bringing out an interesting looking worm that they're calling the Gadget Worm. And in true Yum fashion, it is $3.99 for an 8-pack, which I love, right? You want to talk about something that's just uber affordable and something that will be used by a ton of anglers. A new worm from Yum for $4 a pack. Sign me up all day long. Yum is also coming out with a creature bait, the Mother Bug, which looks like a pretty solid structure bug type bait. Again, only $3.99 a pack, super affordable. You love to see some of that stuff come out too in a world where everything is $10, $15, $20, $25. Good old Yum is not letting us down with some new soft plastic offerings under $4 a pack. NetBait is also going to drop a new worm called the Dirty 30 Worm, which honestly looks more like a giant hellgrammite than it does a worm. but they do look cool. It's kind of got that sort of hex pattern looking deal that NetBait has really leaned into over the past couple of years. Those are debuting at $6.99 a pack. They're 5 inches long and they come 5 to a pack for under $7. And then if we want to keep going here, Big Bite Baits in the soft plastic world is also going to be releasing a tube that's called the Flat Tube. Now, I have heard this has been designed by Fletcher Shryock, and it's meant to be more of like a gliding tube on the fall. So I am interested in this actually as a guy that loves fishing a tube. A new look on a tube could be fun from Big Bite Baits. It could also probably skip pretty well would be my guess. $5.99 a pack, 8 to a pack, 4 inches long. The new flat tube should be releasing from Big Bite Baits at ICAST. Now, if we want to make our way over to jigs and bladed jigs, we can start with Great Lakes Finesse, who is dropping a new finesse skirted Ned head jig. So it is basically just a skirted version of their Ned heads that they've already had out. A little pricey, but it's premium stuff because it's Great Lakes Finesse, so you know it's not going to be like the cheapest in the world. They're $6.99 per Ned jig, it looks like, from what I can see. 3 sizes. They have 1/8 ounce, 3/16, and a 1/4 ounce. So very light stuff there, on brand for Great Lakes Finesse. You have a small, really premium skirted Ned jig. And then, as we're on the topic of jigs and bladed jigs, we have 2 products that if I read the tea leaves, I'm going to feel bad talking about. But like I said at the top of the show here, they were technically on the internet. I posted about them. I grabbed a picture of where I found them. I posted them on our Instagram. You can see them. So this information was out as of last week. And then once I posted it, it immediately got taken down by this company. So I'm guessing, and this actually happens a lot around ICAST, is that a retailer or, I'm not going to throw under the bus who I got this information from, but there was a retailer online, a very big retailer that everybody's heard of, that had this buried on their website, and I was able to find it. And I'm guessing the retailers accidentally pushed live some products that they weren't supposed to push live on the website yet. And sometimes those brands just aren't ready for that stuff to hit the internet, but the retailers push it out anyway, and they're not supposed to. So that looks like what might have happened here is it could have been included on a big website update, and it shouldn't have been yet. So the one place that they were visible a few days ago is now gone, but I've already put it up on Facebook and Instagram. It's out there, so I feel like we can go ahead and talk about it. So Z-Man is releasing, stop me if you've heard this before, another chatterbait. And this chatterbait looks like it's going to be called the PZ2 chatterbait. I have no idea why they're calling it that, but from what I saw before it got taken down, the main difference of this chatterbait looks like the head shape. It looks like the PZ2 will have more of a swim jig style head, and I think what they're going for is to have it come through cover a little better, come through weeds a little bit better, and be a little bit more hydrodynamic and be able to cut through. So that looks like what they're going for versus more of the kind of ball archy style head of a lot of the regular chatterbaits that they make. So there's another chatterbait coming from Z-Man. Along with some other micro chatterbaits. I saw some of these again before they got taken down too, but one of them looks like a rooster tail with a chatterbait blade on it, which is interesting. They had some skirtless ones, so it looks like there will be some new bladed jigs from Z-Man, and from what I have seen, it looks like it's going to be anchored by that PZ2, which is more of a swim jig style head on a traditional chatterbait. If we want to stay in Z-Man world, though, the other thing from Z-Man that caught my eye, again, that was immediately deleted, but I already posted it, so it's a little too late, is the new TRD finesse jig. Now, it looks from the picture like a pretty premium finesse jig from Z-Man. It looks like, my best guess is it's got some sort of chip-resistant head on it. It's more of like a ball style head than the shroom heads that Z-Man likes to lean into. It's got a normal looking skirt. It's got a weed guard, and it looks like they probably used a nicer hook than normal. And I'm somebody that likes to complain a lot about the terminal stuff from Z-Man. So from what I can see, it looks like a BKK, and I've heard a couple things to corroborate that. But the TRD finesse jig is something from Z-Man that I'm actually really excited to look at ICAST. And then there are some other things that have started to slip, and this is where I'm going to get into like some gray area, but I'm going to go out on a limb here because I've seen teasers for it this week, and the teaser videos say that more information is coming on July 7th, which is when this episode should go live. So I'm going to go ahead and say it now because it should be out by the time you're listening to this. But on the real side, all of my information that I've got from multiple people that know what's going on is that we are going to get a new Shimano Corrado DC at ICAST 2026. And I guess that we'll see today if that's right, because it should be out by the time you're listening to this. If not, maybe a little bit later today. I guess, depending on if you're listening to this super early in the morning, we might have beat it by a couple hours. But at some point today, Shimano should release that there will be a new Curado DC coming out at ICAST. And if you look hard enough in their teaser video from July 1st, you can kind of tell what that is. It looks like a new Curado DC if you really study that video with a close eye. So we are getting a new Shimano Curado DC from everything that I have heard, and more information should be coming on that in the coming weeks. And in the rod world, we're getting a new Fitzgerald Versus series casting rod in the 140 range. We're going to get some really expensive Norris Roadrunner rods brought over here at $700 a piece. Norris is obviously a very popular JDM brand, so it's interesting that they're going to be bringing over and dropping some $700 rods here in the US, but hey, to each their own. And I'm not going to lie, I'm definitely looking forward to hopefully picking some of them up in Orlando if they are there and seeing what the hype is about with Norris. And then, of course, there will be a lot more in the coming week. Like this week from now until next week's episode, I'm sure the floodgates will open. And then the following week is ICAST, where we will just get a fire hose of new gear. Like this always happens every single year. There are some leaks, and this ends up being like 1/50th of what comes out at ICAST. So if you're listening to this and you're disappointed, well, good news is this is like not even the first bite of the appetizer of the 4-course meal. So you still have a ton of gear that will be debuting here in the next couple weeks. We will be at ICAST in Orlando to bring you a really unique opportunity to hear from me, who has no sort of bias to any of these products. And I'm just going to call it like it is. I'm going to go there. I'm going to pick up as much gear as I can. I'm going to talk to as many people as I can, and really try and come back with information and opinions and thoughts that you're only going to hear here on Tackle Talk. So I am excited for that. ICAST is one of my favorite times of the year as someone that just loves to experience and, also kind of pick apart new gear and figure out what I am and am not really excited for, and kind of see through some of the marketing stuff and really put hands on new gear and give honest opinions on it. That is coming here in a couple weeks, so get excited for that. All right, everybody, we are going to get to the fishing pole here in just a second. We have a great one for you this week, but before we do, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Humminbird. And today, we are shining the spotlight on Humminbird's Mega Live 2. Now, Humminbird Mega Live 2 live sonar delivers a real-time view with unmatched clarity and detail, giving you, the angler, an instant look beneath the surface to inform every cast. More information means better decision-making. It means more high-target casts, more precise casts, and that's the efficiency boost that Mega Live 2 can give you. You get instant insight into what's going on beneath the surface so you can find fish and structure. I mean, everybody always wants to talk about seeing fish on live sonar, and sure, that can be a part of it, but I love using live sonar to just get a better look at what structure, depth, and features I'm dealing with at any given time. With Mega Live 2, you can clearly see every detail so you can be more confident in how you fish every cast, any condition. And with easy mounting and all-season capability, Mega Live 2 fits into however you like to fish. For more information, you can head over to www.humminbird.com. Humminbird Mega Live 2. Next-gen clarity, next-level fun. The Tackle Talk podcast is also brought to you in part by Minn Kota. And every Minn Kota trolling motor is built to help get you to fish and keep you there so you can focus on what matters most, actually fishing. Holding a spot, navigating contour lines, fighting the wind, Minn Kota can make all of that a breeze with state-of-the-art features and tech. Minn Kota trolling motors are easy to command and deliver season after season dependability. With Minn Kota, unmatched performance, effortless control, and confidence all come standard with every single model. For more information, you can head over to www.minnkotamotors.com. That is minnkotamotors.com. Minn Kota, built to fish.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Fishing Pole. Brought to you by Humminbird. Explore more at humminbird.com.
All right, everybody, it is time once again for the fishing poll, which is our weekly listener poll that lets you be a part of the show by going over and voting at tackletalkpodcast.com and clicking fishing poll at the top of the page. But this week's poll question is a little bit of a deeper one. We've done a lot of gear-related questions lately, and rightfully so. This is Tackle Talk. We talk about a lot of gear. But I wanted to get a little bit introspective today and ask you guys, what is your biggest weakness as an angler? And we talk a lot here on Tackle Talk about techniques, tips, tackle, and a lot more of the positive side of things and things that we can learn from, we can improve on, we can try. But I think sometimes it's also important to identify your weaknesses and be aware of them. I mean, I know I have a ton of weaknesses as an angler, and I try my best to either A, improve on those constantly, or B, work around them. And by working around them, I mean like finding a substitute or avoiding situations that require me to stare that weakness in the face. That's another side that people don't talk about too much. Everybody always says, hey, if you're bad at X, get better at X. And in a vacuum, that's great. In theory, yes, you would love to get better at whatever you're not good at, but you can also compensate for that weakness by strategically avoiding it or finding a substitute. And that's worked just as much for me as actually getting better at my weakness, which is what everybody says to do. So a great example would be like skipping. I'm not great at skipping. Like I'm serviceable. I can skip, but I also know that I'm not the best. I'd love to sit here and pretend that I can skip under docks and trees and, everything just like you see online and never mess up, but I just can't. I can't say that because it's not true. If skipping is on a scale from 1 to 100, and 100 is like those insane guys you see on the internet that can skip under any situation with like the glow up baits and stuff, it's nuts. And then 1 is like, a newborn infant. I'm probably at I don't know, honestly, a 45, maybe 50. I feel like I am average to maybe slightly below average at skipping. Because at the end of the day, I can skip and I can usually eventually get that bait where I want it to, but it might take me a couple attempts to do it. So to compensate for that, I actually do a few things. One, an easy one, is if I'm going to be skipping, I will actually bump my brakes up on my casting reel so that if I do make a bad cast or I hit a dock post or I just don't get the momentum on that bait I want to and it starts stopping itself on the water, I don't bird nest my whole reel and then I'm out of commission for a couple minutes while I try and sit there and pick it out and fix it. That's not efficient fishing. So I bump up my brakes to compensate for that. I will also tie on a bait on a spinning rod if I know that I need to get way, way back there under something and I don't have a choice. Or sometimes that even requires me to switch both the bait and to a spinning rod. So I'll switch to a bait that I know I can skip on a spinning rod a little easier. So maybe if I was skipping a jig with a casting rod and I just can't get back there, I don't trust myself, I'll actually switch over to like a wacky rig on a spinning rod and then I can get it back there. And I could just be stubborn and say, no, I should be skipping on my bait caster with this jig. But in reality, I'm kidding myself. If I think me personally, with my skill set, am going to get that jig on that bait caster as far back as I need it to versus just swallowing my pride, switching over to a wacky rig on a spinning rod and making that cast and just getting it back there to the very, very back of that dock or that overhang. So you just have to make concessions sometimes or work around your weaknesses. And like I said, I know that's a side of things that nobody ever likes to talk about because they just like to say, no, go out in your yard or go out to the lake and just practice skipping until you're good at it. That's great in theory, but let's be honest, we don't do that. We don't have the time to do that a lot of times. We are, working around life and work and family and everything. And you don't have time to spend 15 hours a day out on the water getting better at skipping. So sometimes it does mean working around those weaknesses. But I guess if I had to answer this question, obviously skipping would be on my list somewhere for sure. Like I said, I'm just a mediocre skipper. Another weakness that I have is trying to take too much gear with me at any given time. I have a really bad habit of overthinking my tackle before I leave, and then I do try to take too much with me, and then every dang time I get out on the water, I end up throwing the same core of baits anyway, so I don't know why I stressed so much about what baits I need to take before I actually left. There's a lot of anxiety that happens with me before I actually leave my driveway, thinking, oh my gosh, do I have everything? Do I have something to cover every situation? What if I get out there and I wish I had this with me, or I wish I had that with me? I'm very, very bad at that and something I need to get better at. I would also say tackle organization is always going to be one of my biggest struggles, but I do think I've gotten a little better at that over the past year. I bought a black pack, so I have a crate system now for my kayak, and I developed a system with my Flambeau boxes that works well for me so that I can decide which of the 3 or 4 or 5 boxes to take with me at any given time, and I can rotate them around. That's helped a lot. But I think on the water, one of my biggest weaknesses is probably switching baits too often. I'm such a run and gun, fast paced, never satisfied type of guy that I switch my baits constantly. And I know that that leads to me missing out on fish because I'm just not keeping my head down and making another cast. And instead, I'm spending time changing rods, retying or reclipping or just rummaging through my gear. I know that's a problem. I'm sure that has to make my list somewhere too. I'm also really bad about catching 3 or 4 fish on something and then switching my bait because I think something else is going to work better. I have a very, very bad habit of not just sticking with something that's working and thinking, well, okay, if this is working, then maybe this other thing will be working. No, Andrew, it's working. Stop changing it and just hammer down and fish what you know is working for that situation at any given time. So there's a couple weaknesses there that I definitely have to work through. But the fun part about this is that that's my list. I'm really curious to see what you all said, because this is such a wide open question. You can take this so many different ways, and I honestly have no idea where you guys are going to end up here. I don't know if it's going to be, more off the water stuff, if it's more mental, if it's specific baits. I have no idea where you're going to take this, so I am excited to see. So I am pulling up the results as we speak right now, and this is going to be tougher probably to break down because there are so many different answers as I scroll through here. But your top answer, I have that compiled over here to the side as well. It looks like your number one answer, and it was not a runaway by any means. It looks like it's about 10.5% of the vote, is relying too much on your confidence baits or patterns. So not stepping out of your comfort zone, I guess, and just fishing what you feel comfortable with. This might be a hot take, I don't know, but I don't really think that's a weakness. Like, I think you're fishing smart. You're fishing your confidence baits and certain techniques that you know work, and you're just using those to your advantage. Yes, I hear what you're saying, that you might be missing out on some other options or techniques or things that you should learn and you should build confidence with. But at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you're out there smashing fish on a chatterbait and you feel comfortable with a chatterbait, then don't worry about switching to a drop shot that you have no confidence in. Just throw the chatterbait and catch the fish. It's only a problem when it's costing you fish because you're not able to adapt at all to a situation because you only have 1 or 2 baits that you have any confidence in. If you have 7 to 10 baits you feel confident in, that's probably enough to get you through most situations. So I would say number 1 answer here, relying too much on your confidence baits, obviously a popular choice in this week's fishing poll, but not one I would be too concerned about if I was you guys. Now, the number 2 answer here for your biggest weakness looks like it's going to be fishing deep or fishing offshore. And those two kind of go hand in hand together. Yes, fishing deep, fishing offshore can both be intimidating for sure because of the lack of visible features that you're dealing with. It's not like flipping standing timber or throwing a frog around lily pads or working a riprap wall. This is just kind of that feeling that you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't know where to start. It is that sort of needle in a haystack feeling and you feel kind of helpless. But this is where it's important to figure out what's going on under the water. And there's multiple ways to do that. Electronics obviously help nowadays. If you can find depth changes, you can find rock, you can find wood, you can find bottom composition changes. Of course, all of that helps. But I actually learned to fish offshore with 0 electronics. I learned to fish offshore with a deep diving crankbait and a heavy football jig. And I put my time in and I learned the hard way how to go out there and fish off the bank. And I've mentioned it before on this show, but we have a lot of new listeners, so I think it's probably worth repeating here, is that there was one sentence from a pro angler back in the day, Brian Thrift, who basically taught me to offshore fish with that one sentence that he said on TV. And we had Brian on a few years back, and I told him about this, and we kind of shared the story back and forth. But I was watching him on TV. He was leading a tournament, and he was out in the middle of the lake while everybody else was around the banks. And the camera went live on him to Brian Thrift in the boat, and they basically said, "Hey, what's working for you?" And he said, "Man, I'm just out here counting rocks." And that was the moment. The light bulb went off in my head, and I was sitting at home and I said, I can do that. I can go out there, and I don't mean that in like a slight to Brian, obviously. I mean it like a really cool way where it's like, oh, that makes it way more attainable. I can do that. I don't have forward-facing sonar. I don't have electronics at the time. I don't have anything. But that gave me the confidence to say, I can go out in the middle of the lake with a heavy football jig and count rocks. I can let it sink to the bottom, slowly work it over each individual rock so I'm feeling what's going on down there and start to put together what works and what doesn't work. That sounds like something that is attainable to me. That one sentence really broke down the doors and all of the doubt and all of the fear that I had of wasting my time trying to fish offshore, and just said, hey, Andrew, go find a spot with rock and go count them with a football jig. And I did that, and I slowly found out how to fish offshore. And then I incorporated that deep diving crankbait in there to really be a search tool to find rock. And that became my system for a long time, was go out in the middle of the lake, take a deep diving crankbait, take a DT16 or something, and go out there and just crank until you feel the bottom feel like it was chunk rock versus mud or clay or weeds or whatever. And once you found rock, then I would switch over to a heavy football jig, like 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce football jig, and cast it down there, let it hit that rock, and just drag it over the rocks and count every single one of them and try different pops and try different twitches until the point that I felt confident going out there and fishing blind with a football jig and with a deep diving crankbait in the middle of the lake on a kayak with no electronics. That is where you start, I think, for learning how to fish offshore, is you have to do something like that that builds a little bit of confidence and takes the anxiety out of it a little bit and boils it down to something that is attainable and you can go out and do. And then number 3 response here for your biggest weakness, funny enough, was jerkbaits. Jerkbaits in general was your number 3 answer here. And that's really interesting to me because, again, we've talked about it before, but that's a bait that maybe the bait that I feel most confident with and I feel like I'm good with. Definitely one of the top ones. And jerkbaits are weird, I guess, because you have to have jerkbaitable water. You have to have water that you can throw a jerkbait in, and that's not everywhere. So for me, a jerkbait is not a super shallow player. It's not a creek bait. It is way more of like a lake or a deeper spot on the river or something like that, because you have to avoid weeds. You have to be mindful of anything that could be down there that you could get snagged on, because it's one of the snaggiest baits out there. A crankbait at least has like a bill that will deflect off of things. A jerkbait, man, you can get that stuck in like almost any situation. So you have to be careful there. So there are spots that are conducive and not conducive to throwing a jerkbait, and that's part of the struggle, I think, with them sometimes as well. But if you're having trouble with jerkbaits, go back and listen to episode 320 of the Tackle Talk podcast, which was titled My Best Jerkbait Tips and Secrets. I think that's a cool episode with some juice in there that might help you out a little bit. So those are your top 3 answers from the fishing poll this week. And then below that, you have a ton of answers. You have casting. You have buying too much tackle. You have budget was another one that popped up a lot. Patience, not enough time on the water, breaking down new water, hook set timing, fishing too slowly, eliminating dead water, color selection, and a bunch of these answers were just individual baits. So there are some answers in here about drop shots, crankbaits, chatterbaits, buzzbaits, frogs, jigs, and a lot more like the jerkbait one was, where it's like, hey, this specific technique I do have a problem with. But those are your top 3 answers from this week's fishing poll of your biggest weakness as an angler. Number 1, relying too much on your confidence baits. Number 2, fishing deep or offshore. And number 3 was jerkbaits. All right, everybody. Next up here on the show, we are going to get to the mailbag in just a second. But before we do, the Tackle Talk podcast and the mailbag are powered by Amped Outdoors. Amped Outdoors is an industry leader in lithium batteries engineered and built for all types of marine applications. It could be your graph, it could be ice fishing, it could be live sonar, your trolling motor, your kayak battery, whatever it is, Amped has a battery for you. With Amped, you get the highest quality components. You get waterproof case designs. With their larger batteries, you get Bluetooth connectivity and heated charging standard. That is a big deal on those 50 amp hour and up batteries. That has been a lifesaver for me, the Bluetooth connectivity for my kayak motor. No longer do I have to just sit there and blindly guess how much battery I have left or try to keep track of it in my mind. No more guessing. I just pull up an app and boom, it tells me the percentage that's left. it is such a godsend. You get all of that plus an industry-leading 10-year no-gimmick warranty and world-class customer support based right here in the United States in Hudson, Wisconsin. So you can head over to www.ampedoutdoors.com today to check out all of their batteries, 12 volt, 24 volt, 36 volt. They got power stations, you name it. If you need to power it, they have a battery for you over at ampedoutdoors.com, and power your passion with Amped.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors, your source for premium, affordable lithium batteries.
All right, the first question in today's mailbag is from Ted, who says, "Hi, Andrew. Your Big Four series digging into who actually owns the tackle industry was a lot more work than most fishing shows would ever bother with. What sent you down that rabbit hole?" Hey, Ted, thanks for writing in. I appreciate it. It's funny that you call it a rabbit hole because that's probably a great way to put it. That's where a lot of my ideas, especially for the mini-series type stuff, comes from. It's just a rabbit hole that I don't think I can accomplish in one episode. And I do appreciate the kind words, and it was a ton of work, but I would like to think and hope maybe, I guess, that most other fishing shows would put in that same type of effort too to put out something that they could be proud of. I mean, I think the effort is just something that should happen no matter what, because I think if you give me your time every week, then I owe it to you to put in the maximum amount of effort that I can and respect your time. So thank you, though. I do appreciate it. It means a lot. But what sent me down that rabbit hole, I guess, it was probably that first text exchange that I had with Crispin Powley from GSM last year. And I know we talked about it a little bit in that episode, but at the time, that was probably, I don't know, August of last year. And I knew of people at all four of the parent companies at that time. Like, I knew some people at Pure Fishing. We've had Justin Poe, their rod designer, on the show before. We've had Mark Sexton on the show before to talk about the science of max scent. I mean, I had known Nathan, Dan, and Kyle and some other folks on the Berkeley side of things for a little bit. And then I knew a few people over at Pradco. I knew some people that worked with Pradco pretty heavily, and, Dan Miguel and those type of people that really could vouch for Pradco. And then I knew some people that worked with Rapala VMC, but I didn't know anybody at the time that worked for GSM. That was like the one piece that I think I probably had missing. And Crispin mentioned it, like I said, in that episode, and it's a funny story now. But after ICAST, I called, I think it was the Buckeye Lures Bubbler Blade. I called it the worst lure that I saw at ICAST. I think I actually called it worst in show, or at least one of the worsts in show that I saw. And Crispin messaged me after that. And obviously, he's the head of fishing at GSM who owns Buckeye Lures. And I just remember him being surprisingly cool with the whole thing. And there was also a little side of him that I think rightfully so was playfully like, "Hey man, why you got to do us like that?" Or, also, "Hey, I know it looks silly, but let me tell you why we did what we did on this and where the kind of inspiration for this lure came from." And regardless of what I think of that lure, and I still think it's kind of a very weird lure, I remember being like, man, that's the guy that is the senior VP of fishing at GSM. Like the big, bad, evil GSM, that guy who was surprisingly cool with me taking a dump on one of his projects and actually reached out and had a sense of humor and was obviously a really good dude. That's the guy that's behind GSM from the fishing side. And so that was kind of like the point where I would then start scrolling Instagram or Facebook, and I would just see the internet laying into these companies, especially around ICAST time. I think Pure Fishing and GSM get the brunt of the roasting around ICAST. And I just remember thinking, man, it would be so cool to show the other side of things, to show things from their perspective. Because as I've gotten to see behind the scenes at a lot of those companies, and I'm a pretty normal, like rational, middle of the road guy, and I'm a regular fishing consumer. And I'll be honest, I have, not been a huge fan of the big companies at times either. And it's really easy to say private equity, they don't care. The quality has gone down. They're copying everybody. So-and-so got fired. And it all just gets lobbed all over the place. But when you actually get to know the people there and you see what it is they do day in and day out, you get kind of this renewed or new respect for what they do. And I don't have a dog in that fight either way. I don't work with any of those companies. I'm not sponsored by any of those companies. Quite the opposite, actually. I think I'm one of the few people that actually tells all of them no, because I want to stay independent and impartial with the show. But I remember thinking, if these companies have sort of won me over, I guess, even if it's just a little bit from what I previously thought, then I bet the listeners would appreciate to see that side of things too. And then you can make your own decision. But at least you didn't just live in an echo chamber of negativity online, and you at least get to hear these 4 giant parent companies out. So I think that was the rabbit hole that I dove down, and I'm kind of happy with how it came out. All right, the next question here is from Derek, who says, "Hi, Andrew. I have a question specifically targeting sunfish. You may have already talked about this in one of your episodes, but I was wondering about subspecies and hybridization. Are there unlimited possibilities to the hybridizing among sunfish and panfish? With so many various streams and creeks in my area, could there be certain fish that are unknown to modern fisheries? Thank you, Derek." Well, hey, Derek, I appreciate the question. I'll be honest, I'm not an expert by any means on the hybridization of sunfish for sure. I do know that hybrid bluegills get giant. We used to have them in a couple ponds near where I grew up, and they were just massive. It was so much fun to fish for them. But I read your question, and I actually went looking on the internet because I was like, I don't really know the answer to this. I don't know if they sort of naturally don't hybridize and they sort of stick to their own subspecies, or whether it's just like free game and they go all over the place and they do hybridize. I don't know. So I looked it up online and I found some research from Dr. Wes Neal that says sunfish belong to the genus Lepomis in the family Centra. I'm going to get all this wrong, so I'm just going to skip over the science part here. But he says there are currently 13 accepted subspecies, but with the ongoing genetic studies, you never know when a species may be split into 2 separate species. The distribution of many of these species overlap. That means that they are found together. In a natural stream or lake, or in a larger artificial reservoir, it is not uncommon to catch 3 or 4 species all hanging out in the same area. To make matters more complicated, they all spawn around the same time of year and within the same temperature range. Add to that the fact that all of the species spawn in similar habitats, usually shallow areas with sand or gravel. Then consider that there are limited spawning areas on each body of water. In fact, 2 or more sunfish species will commonly nest together in the same colony. When an individual of one species departs its nest, a male from another species will commonly swoop in and make the nest his own. You can see where this is going. When you get a lot of, and he uses a word here I won't say on the show, but let's call it friendly. When you get a lot of friendly fish of multiple species in a finite area, it's like spring break in Cancun. And it doesn't take much. Maybe there's a male bluegill and a male red ear sunfish nesting 5 feet apart. The females from each species arrive, deposit their eggs, and the males release their milk just above the eggs. With just a slight current, maybe a swipe of a caudal fin, a few of those sperm are swept off course. 5 feet really isn't that far when the current is helping. Or it could be a case of mistaken identity. Picture a male bluegill waiting patiently as it passes by. "Hello, lady, I love your red earrings." The male bluegill swoons. "Meh, you'll do," says the female red ear sunfish. The resulting offspring can be quite beautiful. With 13 distinct species, there theoretically could be 77 different first-generation crosses. And while they may or may not look very different from their parents, a test of genetics is the only way to know for sure if they are a hybrid and what species. But a good fish biologist can usually make an accurate identification. So I won't read all of it, but I thought that was pretty interesting and figured it was worth sharing on the show. So there you go. Yes, they hybridize, and it sounds like they do it quite frequently, which means you do get a lot of chance for natural kind of, I don't know, mutt fish, for lack of a better term. Like you just get some unpure sunfish and they're a little bit mixed here and there, and it sounds like it can happen fairly easily. So now the other part of your question, I would say the answer is no to. And that's when you ask if there could be a bunch of like unknown species out there, because Dr. Neal's comments say that there are 13 distinct species in the sunfish family. So that does mean there are a lot of possibilities, but it's not infinite. So every one of those possible combinations has probably already been considered, and it would take some kind of crazy splicing there, I guess, to come up with something new that would just absolutely baffle biologists. So I don't think there's probably some, crazy magic undiscovered sunfish swimming around in your local creek, but I'm sure that's what everybody says before they discover a new species. So I guess highly unlikely, but not impossible. All right, the next question is from Andy, who says, "Andrew, great show, keep them coming. What's your opinion on expensive setups for kayak fishing? I just lost my Shimano X Pride with an SLX DC in the river. I have several X Prides, but I'm wondering what to replace it with. Do I stay in that range or do I go cheaper? Thoughts? Get on them, Andy. Well, hey, Andy, thanks for writing in. To answer your question, yeah, I guess I used to be in that camp of, I'm in the kayak. I want to take cheaper combos with me because there's a higher likelihood of me breaking and losing them in the kayak than there is on land or on a boat. I just think accidents happen more frequently in kayaks for me than any other mode of transportation or any other way that I could be fishing. But I switched my thinking a few years back, and now I'm not afraid to take my most expensive rods or reels with me on the kayak for one simple reason. I bought them to fish them. I didn't buy them to last me into my 80s and pass them down to my grandkids. I bought them to catch fish. And that day, if I'm going out and fishing in a kayak, then that piece of gear is going to catch fish with me in the kayak. I'm going to take it with me. Now, does it come with some heartbreaks? Yes, it absolutely does. I've lost hundreds, probably multiple thousands of dollars of rods and reels in the kayak over the years, from things going overboard to snapping, you name it, I've done it. But if I never brought those combos in the kayak in the first place, think of how few fish they would have caught. Like, I would much rather catch 500 fish on a combo and then lose it after 2 years in the kayak than baby that combo and catch 50 fish with it over 10 years and still have it. I bought them to fish them. So that is my stance nowadays, and I would recommend you just buy the gear that you want to fish with, no matter if you're in the kayak or not. All right, and the last question here is from Rory, who says, "Hi, Andrew. I'm 21 years old and I live in Pennsylvania, and I love fishing the river for smallmouth. I'm just wondering what strategies and tactics you use for hot and muggy days when the smallmouth are not fired up." Rory, that is a great question, and it's probably a great time to ask it because it's hotter than heck outside right now. Like, I think the heat index today here in Ohio was like 109, which is unheard of. So it is unbelievably muggy and hot and disgusting. And, what do you do on days like this? If you do want to go out and fish for smallmouth in the river, then, where do you target? So I would say you have two options. I would say you can either slow down and go fish some deeper, slower water that has shade or good cover, or you can try and find the fastest, most oxygenated, active water you can find. Those are my two routes that I'm choosing from. Do I try and go the whitewater route and find fish that are in that fast, active water, and it does get them a little bit up and going? It's just the nature of being in that type of environment, is you're going to be a little bit more aggressive and alert and awake versus something that's just being sluggish in some random slow part of the river. Or do I just go and try and find those fish that are in that deeper water? They're down there, they are in the cooler water, they're in the shade lines, all that kind of stuff. I rarely find fish this time of year, like good fish anyway, in the middle ground on those just disgusting days. They seem to either be in the fast water or they're slid back and they're in some big deep hole. All right, everybody, that is our episode today. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Tackle Talk podcast. I appreciate you guys a ton. As always, you can go to the website, tackletalkpodcast.com. There's a couple cool things there you can check out. One, obviously, this week being the store, which we don't normally talk about, but there is a good reason this week, and it's because today at noon Eastern, our Tackle Talk Retro Smallie Snapbacks go live on the website, so be sure to check those out. Again, I appreciate all of you for supporting the show. I will get those shipped out right away as soon as you order. If you have any questions, you can shoot me an email, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. Over on that same website, tackletalkpodcast.com, you can vote for the fishing poll for next week's episode. You can submit a mailbag question and be a part of the show. You never know, you could hear your question on next week's episode. So with that, I will leave you guys until next Tuesday, where I will see you right back here for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.